bam, do it. This is the one.
Hey, this is Mike Modawell, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
So one of the things that I like to talk about on the show, Mike, is okay. For everybody who's watching, if you haven't read the bio already, Mike Modawell's a badass. He's done a lot of badass things, and he's on today because we were in Delta Company 165th together, and we deployed to Bosnia. He and I were, inseparable for quite a while until his family got there because he was like a what they call in the army a geographic bachelor,
Geographical
and we got to
Bachelor,
meet
yeah.
him a lot. That's right. And so it's look, there's a lot of shows that focus on espionage and spy stuff, but they talk about the sensational stuff. And what we do is sensational and exceptionally hard. But I think the reality is what we do is and I use the word spy because that's what I if we get caught, that's what they're gonna say we're doing, and they're not gonna be wrong. So when you think about what you did and you look back at your career, and in the army you can only do the things you're allowed to do, right? Is Is that deployment from Bosnia? Is that the highlight of your career in the military? You did a lot of stuff. Like you also were an MP too, right? At one point?
Yeah, I was military police for quite a few years before I switched over to counter intel. Was it the highlight of my career? That's such a great question, Pete. In terms of deployment, yes, uh, because it actually, well, with the gift of hindsight, obviously, uh, actually fit what we did, the mission we did, fit my personality really well. I love to be challenged. I love ambiguous situations where you got to be improvisational and I'm an extrovert. So the things we did, just everything kind of aligned with my personality. So in that respect, yeah, it was a highlight for sure. Um, but again, it's kind of bittersweet because like as you kind of introed, my family was with me, and then anytime you leave your family for a couple of days, a week, a month, a year,
Yeah.
that takes a toll on everyone.
Yeah.
So bittersweet. Great experience, challenges with leaving the family.
One of the things that I've realized as a counterintelligence agent working in that field, going out into the field a lot is I'm unique in that I'm at the field level throughout my entire combat experience career. And I've got 70 months of combat zones, right? And so I don't know, every other day on average, I got to go out into the field and talk to people. And you get better at this job in time. Like you don't just have extroversion as a skill. You have like, I learned to build trust. I learned how to extend trust and have trust paid back to me and have this trust exchange that look, there's no manual for that. I mean, there's a guy that wrote a great book, Robin Dreek. I want to have him back on the show again soon. He codified trust, and I was one of the things I had realized. I'm like, I need to codify trust because this is key to doing this well. The problem is that if you're an agent, a human collector, or whatever you were talking about, you think you're better than you actually are. You don't realize just how undeveloped you are because you don't get to do the job enough to really become. I mean, you think about a 18 Bravo, right? That guy gets to shoot guns his entire damned career, take them apart, go to schools about them, everything. There's not a school like that for the human collector.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison. Um, the only way they can teach you is experientially, right? And the only way to get that is to deploy, or like you said, you have many deployments. Um, you can't sharpen your skills. Well, I mean, some of the training we used to do, they'd say go to a local pub to learn your to help develop your language, and
Yeah.
back in Darmstadt. Um, and uh, so you go to the pub and you're trying to develop your language and stuff. But the difference is when you deploy, it's essentially it's immersion, right? It's almost you're entering the culture, and you're experientially again you're learning more and you're developing faster. And then when your deployment's over, you go back and you're kind of right back to the doctrine of things, right? So it's
Yeah.
structured, it's regulatory, and it's just, I mean, Army does really good job with training, but for skill sets like we had to have, the only really way to hone those skills is to deploy.
Yeah. And some of these skills, You need another expert. The Army wasn't wise enough to figure this out on their own, but they sent me ultimately to Huachuca right after that. And for those watching, Huachuca is where you make spies in the Army. And I ended up at the counterintelligence force protection source operation course as an instructor.
If so, yeah.
Yeah. And so I had just done this and no one else had really done it. I mean, some of our people came through and it was funny. Like, here comes Chief Whitlow, Bert. And I'm like, oh, Bert, you're going to suck at this course. I'm not sure you know how to run sources, even though we had just done it, I'm pulling his leg. But most of the rest of the Army is desperate for this experience. And we did a pretty good job because our chief had deployed to Somalia and he had run sources there and everything. But he also didn't respect the fact that I had done it, because I was just an E5. But these courses were invaluable because I now got to watch how you did it and how Bert did it and how Bart did it and how all these different people, how they did it. And I got to add those moves in and then share them with you guys as you came through as students. And this, that course, hard to get into that course. Maybe there's 6 iterations a year and timing and money and approvals. Most everybody's not going to go to that thing.
No, it's certainly not. And like with any course, though, it's not necessarily the right fit for people.
Yeah.
So it's such a unique skill set, as I said earlier, um, that just going through the training is it's really not going to help the Army. They're going to train you, but they're not going to know if it worked until you're really in the situation, right? So I'm going to use an example. I don't name names because I don't know if they want me to name their name, but as a team member, while deployed, this individual soldier was an introvert, right? Intellectually, all there. Intellectually could understand situations. Personality-wise, it was very uncomfortable with doing what we needed to do, whether it was developing services or whatever it is. The Army buys at Huachuca as best they can. We're going to try to fill the seats. He can't.
I'm going to jump in because my audio for you is going bad. I'm not sure if it's a wireless thing, but I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to say this for a few minutes and we'll give your wireless a chance to hopefully catch up. Everybody, I'm going to be riding across the nation with Save the Brave. We do this every year. This is the 3rd year. We're doing this ride in honor of my brother, Eric, a Marine who took his own life. Save the Brave works to get veterans to stop wanting to kill themselves. This is the bottom line. And then when something does happen, we try to find ways to support the family so that they can move on without that person in their life. It's a tragedy every time it happens, and we work desperately to try to make it stop. This ride is one of the ways we create awareness and raise money so that we can get veterans on boats, get them on these rides, get them working on something to give them value and get them just to want to live, for fuck's sake. So what I'm asking everybody to do is to go to my fundraiser page. I'm going to put this in the notes right now. You'll be able to see it. I'll pop up here on the screen. This is the best way to help. Hang on, that's not the right link. Where's the right link here? Stand by. What I want you to do is just go to my Facebook page. You can go there and you can grab it and you'll see the link there and just click on that and get involved. And if veterans and that kind of thing is not your thing, that's totally fine. I want you to do whatever your thing is a little harder in honor of my brother. We can all do a little bit more on charity. If you're an adult and you're in any way stable in your life, my gosh, get to work, right? But if not, then and there's the link right there. It's the actual link coming up, bam, right there. And you look in the comments, you should see it on Facebook and or on YouTube. If you're an adult, you need to be leaning on some of these charity problems, whether you're animals, environments, people who don't have enough, whatever it is. Do that thing if you're not going to do the Save the Brave thing. But there's the link right there for the Ride for the Brave. All right, I'm hoping that Mike and your wireless are back in shape.
Yeah, I hope so too. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good now. I don't know what it is, but we're going to work with it.
I've always been glitchy.
It's true. Let me back up. You were talking about what we need to do. Like we go to Aschaffenburg for our exercises and like I would play the mayor. And here's the thing again, right? We're a counterintelligence unit and we don't go to the field very often. And so when you do, you might get to play a role with somebody. You might not. You might spend your entire deployment and just never be the person that sits there. Like I never got to do a meet. I often played a role, but I was never I was never the other side of it, right? Which was good for me because I was young, I needed to see that, and sometimes I was the rabbit, and I would walk around town, and you guys would try to surveil me and everything,
Mhm.
but
We
not
did that at
everybody.
Hangout. We did that at
Yeah,
Hangout too, if you remember. Those
yeah,
were some
absolutely.
fun real world exercises, yeah.
But we don't get to do enough of that stuff to understand how complex surveillance is, how to do things when your comms don't work. I mean, I remember a lot of the S codes, the brevity codes. We're not going to go into those too much. They're not classified, but we try to protect those a little bit. But these
Right.
things all take a lot of mastery. The thing I know I did the most was alert, assemble, upload. And that was just us like we load the fucking 5 ton. And I'm like, could we please do some actual spy shit? You know? I mean, this is not, and I didn't realize how much we didn't know. And you're right, like these introverts that get out there that are desperate to do the job and they're always solving the puzzle. And you're like, slow down. You don't even know this person yet. You've met one person. You have not solved the fucking puzzle. But we got those guys, and God bless, go in the shop and do analysis and work on
Mhm.
the puzzle. But like guys like Mike and I let us go out into the field to go meet people that they couldn't possibly meet because we know that that's what we're good at.
Yeah, the other thing, I think we both agree it was, that career field was extremely complex.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, different MOSs, if you're a truck driver, you drive trucks to train. If you're infantry, you shoot guns, right?
Yeah.
Um, but what we encountered was what we learned quickly is we needed the ability to talk to people at so many different levels. So, as an example, we might get a good information from a young boy who's kicking a soccer ball around a car park or something, and then right after that, we got to go talk to elderly man that's been a barber for 40 years. And then right after that, we got to go talk to the chief of police. And then right after that, we got to go talk to the mayor. And right after that, we have to go talk to a colonel from, a supporting, different countries' military or whatever. So the point, I think you get the point is you got to switch your
Uh,
how you talk to people, how that you switch your tact, your I won't say switch your personality, but your behaviors to get to their level, whether it's up or down, and do our thing and work our
mm.
magic. And that's something that was they never taught us that because
No.
they typically they'd hire a couple of actors or something to run a few role playing things like that. But it was always kind of the canned thing. But yeah, the diversity in who we talked to was challenging. But for people like me who love those ambiguous situations, we
Yeah.
thrived in that. But it is not for everybody, for sure.
Yeah. One of the things, it took a long time for me to learn, I had to learn it, in my 30s, was that every time you went and encountered somebody, if the army had been there a long time, and I'm saying the army, the services, whoever, they had built a bio on this person, and it's always based on threat. And so it's like, "Don't eat this guy's chow. I had diarrhea once." Like, okay, that's adorable. That's great. Except for when he offers me food, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna eat it. That's my damn job, you know? So I don't care about that. I don't care that his brother's in the Taliban. Matter of fact, give me the nastiest Taliban motherfucker you can, and please let me talk to that guy. Right? But if you're not cool with that, and you have to be cool with that to be good at tactical collection, then and I would even say strategic collection. If you can find the monster and make the monster your friend, I don't know that there's a better thing you can do as a collector.
Yeah. So I'll give an example. And again, I'm reluctant to name names, not only for the soldiers that I was with, but also for some of the people that we worked with, sources or what have you. But um, initially, when we got over there, there's nothing set up. There was nothing literally set up. We ended up in a town called Ulitsa, which is just it was like northwest of the town of Birchko, in the region that we were at. And we were living in a cornfield that after and February slowly started turning into mud. But we hired local nationals to bring in gravel to help us develop things like that. What we quickly learned is some of these local nationals were providing some pretty good information. Um, but at one point, and you may remember this, prior to us arriving, the Birchville Bridge was blown up, and there was a lot of people, a lot of Croatians from the town of Glina and surrounding areas that were killed on that bridge. Well, it turns out one of the main people involved in that was our prime contractor making money and providing information. So it parallels. I don't know if if you ever heard of or read the book "Shake Hands with the Devil." It was
Yeah.
about the Rwanda genocide and the Canadian general Romeo.
Yeah.
I'm butchering his last name, Dalier, I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he had to do exactly what you just said. He had to work with pure evil individuals, mass murderers, and to some extent we did too. And um, that can be haunting.
Yeah. If you go work in Bosnia and you're doing your job and you have to be allowed to do your job. We'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
You're gonna find mass graves. You're gonna find genocide. You're gonna find people who use genocide against their own people to their advantage. People who've done all kinds of heinous, horrible things, and now you gotta try to build these people off ramps, because if they don't have a future, guess what? They're gonna start fighting. And so that's also part of the thing is like you've got to be comfortable walking into a place where these people have already been straight killing people. And they don't even
Hmm.
know us. So it's easy to kill us.
Yeah.
And there was a perception for a lot of people that it wasn't dangerous, but they weren't doing our job. And I guarantee you, anybody who walked off a camp with us or drove off in a 2-vehicle convoy with 3 pistols and 2 M16s, no body armor, I guarantee you, you'd be sweating because that shit was it was crazy
Oh,
dangerous to go do that. We could not get into a gunfight because we would absolutely lose it. Right on cue, Mike.
that was
Wireless. Damn it, your wireless is sticking again.
I'm sorry.
Ah, this is crazy. All right, so I'm gonna fill some time. Hopefully, we get you to be unstuck here. Um, we went off the camp on a regular basis. There was a basic rule for 4-vehicle convoys, but we lived in a cluster. So in the cluster, we could go out in 2 vehicles. And the other thing is if you walked, there was no 4-vehicle convoy. You just walked on a foot patrol and no one cared what you did. And so we would go out all the time unencumbered to different places and walk to places. And we would go to the edge of the camp cluster we were in. When I say camp cluster, it's a pretty big area, right? It's not like that you can see all the camps around you. But, like I figure like 5 miles in between different camps. And so we would go to the edge of the cluster and then foot patrol away from our vehicles into the town that we wanted to go to too. So we were really far from protection and we didn't have a radio. So when folks would say, there's not that much danger out there, I would disagree. Is your wireless working now? Just not. I Yeah, you're broken up still. I'm gonna kick you out. Come back in. Sometimes that helps. All right. I'm going to fill some time here. Hey, everybody, Breaking Down Show. You can always do a great thing for us. You can subscribe. Just go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching on YouTube, use those supers. That's one of the ways that we can drive revenue. It really helps out, that $5 or $10. If you don't want to do all of that, go to breakitdownshow.com, go to the PayPal link, and you just click on the link and you say, hey, I'm going to help Pete out with $20 a month. Bam, you do that. That starts to add up into a pile of money that I can use to help fund the show, right? Yeah, Dickie, it's the connection thing. He lives on 40 acres out in the middle of nowhere, and the fact that he's got wireless and all is pretty crazy. So hopefully we'll get him back on here in a moment because Mike is such a great guest. Maybe we'll have to re-gear and do this another time when he's got good wireless. We'll see what happens though. The thing that I want to say is these shows, it's not cheap to produce. It cost me a good bit of money, and these kind of things like these subscriptions, boy, I tell you what, it is such an advantage to have that help, and it makes it so I'm not as encumbered. I don't have to go out and find as much side work to make things work. You can see how bad Mike's connection is right now. He's just spinning in a circle. I'm going to take him out. Wait, let him come all the way back in. Anyhow, so that's my ask for you guys is just go to that PayPal link or just jump in on the supers if you're on YouTube, because those things definitely make a difference. Okay. Mike's thing is not working. I cannot get him in. Dickie, why don't you ask me a question? You're out there. I know you're out there commenting and stuff. What do you got for me? What would you like to know? And we'll see if we can fill this this time up until Mike can get back in. I think I got Mike back. I think. Are you back, Mike? Kinda. It's so frustrating sometimes with live wireless TV type things. Mike, can you hear me?
Not sure if you can hear me or not, Pete.
I can kind of hear you. Yeah. Well, shoot, man. Do you want to try to connect on your phone? Okay, so while Mike is working on trying to figure out what he's going to do, at least isn't freezing and stuttering. Yes, that's true. That is true. What's something that I can suppose the main question it has for is how do you demonstrate your need in that role? How do I demonstrate my need? I try not to be needing anything. I try not to offer anything. I try to just come in as clean and free of any obligation or demands as I can. And hopefully that allows me to establish trust with that person. Mike, let's talk. You look a lot clearer, so I bet you sound good.
Can you hear me now, Pete?
I can. Okay. So going off camp and dangerous and not having enough weapons and not having a fucking radio. If you can believe that, our team had no functional radio.
Yeah, no, it was the same for us, and I think people don't understand the timelines, right? So people, I think today are very familiar with Iraq and Afghanistan, the deployments, the up armored Humvees, the trauma plates that were issued with a full battle rattle and all that stuff. We didn't have any of that, and in an area in areas that were known for snipers
Yeah.
everywhere, and not only that, but a lot of war torn PTSD, alcohol drinking individuals are still itching for some action. Um, and as you said, like for us, as an example, we had 3 or 4 different cities that we had to cover outside of the base camp. So
Yeah.
we went 7 days a week, um, all day long, basically outside of the base camp where there is no cover, there's no protection, and yeah, there were some scary times. And if you think about it, if you thought about it, then it would just kind of shut your mission down because then you start getting, full of anxiety. But so you didn't think about it, you just did it.
Yeah. One of the things we were talking about before too is the military especially struggles with counterintelligence. For example, commanders aren't briefed on how to use us. Even military intelligence commanders don't really know what CI is, probably because we don't tell anybody. We're shitty at storytelling, and our jobs are also different. And we're a bunch of assholes, legitimately. Like we have a lot of people who struggle
Well, I
with.
don't know about all of us, but
Not all of us. We have a lot though. We have a lot of people you're like, "Why the fuck are you in this job?" Right? I mean, that is
yeah.
definitely a thing because there's a lot of people that wanna be cops. They wanna arrest everybody, you know? Yes, we are spy hunters. Yes, we're looking for spies, but I don't start with everybody's a spy. I start with, "Hey, let me see what we can find out," and then go from there. So there's that problem. But one of the things is that to do our job, to go relate to people that are alcoholics, that have PTSD, that have been in wars, that make their own booze, you have to drink that booze. And so by regulation, we're allowed to do it. It's funny because they always try to undermine that regulation, but they try to re-regulate it in that we're not allowed to do it. But here's the reality, Mike, this makes no goddamn sense, right? If I was an infantry guy, I'm allowed to murder people by law, but I can't. But Pete can't have a little bit of booze. And then don't forget, they hand us booze to hand out to people as well. It's the craziest thing. Like, why are you trying to limit the thing that I need to do to go get you the thing that you need to keep from getting blown up? And by the way, that job's fucking hard.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it earlier. They just don't know. Like you said,
Uh,
commanders don't know what to do with us. CSMs, they don't know. So if you don't know, your default is you treat the person like a soldier, right? What do soldiers do? They get put on the DA 6 for guard duty, which is against our regulations. We don't do guard duty. There's reasons why soldiers wear their uniform. We didn't wear uh, the exact same uniform. We wear more of a sterilized uniform with um, some things pulled off of it, right? Um, so there was so many different examples. I mean, I got all kinds of stories, but the bottom line is they just did not know what to do with it. It's if I can say it this way, it's a rare MOS. It's a difficult MOS to get into. It's a difficult MOS to stay active in. And because of that, folks just don't know how to use their resources. And then when you tell them, they got that look in their eyes like, yeah, right. What
Yeah.
do you mean you guys don't? What do you, no?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
we're just categorized as a default mechanism. We're just soldiers, but
Right.
we're not.
We're not, right? Yeah, yeah, and it sounds like we're trying to get away with shit, but, like, you have to understand, I may have to investigate anybody in your command.
Exactly.
I can't be living with these guys. I can't be doing sandbag duty. I'm glad to go out and work every goddamn day, and you know what? And this is the thing I learned, I called it the Turner Challenge. If you think I'm not doing my job, grab your fucking ruck, and you let me know when you get tired, because 'cause I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be out every day, 20-hour days, 16-hour days, all the goddamn time, sometimes 36-hour days. So if the minute you think I'm not working, you go do my job with me, you let me know. And no one ever wants to take you up on that challenge. And the thing is I would outproduce teams by myself, and not because I'm a quantity over quality guy, but because I fucking went out all the time and I was prepared and I knew how to ask great questions. And so you'd have like the entire rest of the team produce like 2 reports a week, and I'm like, I'm going out every goddamn day. You know, even if I see nothing, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna take that nothing and turn it into something and give you a product so you have an idea what's going on. But unless you can say those words to a commander and then deliver, the sergeant major is going to want you pulling guard duty.
Yeah, we exactly. And I remember our CSM for the base camp. Well, that's exactly what he was not happy with. Our teams not pulling their weight, as they would phrase it. But we were exponentially. They just didn't understand it, and we weren't allowed to share a lot of it. So there's just that disparity that just frustrated some people. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just bringing back some stories. But we fortunately after a while we had a very good commander. I'll say his name because I was proud to be under him, and he ended up being I think a 3-star general. He's retired now, but um, uh, Tony Kukalo, General Tony Kukalo, 3-5 Cav commander at the time, and uh, he actually gave us our call signs because he thought, oh, you guys are pretty cool. I'm going to call you Shadow. That's Shadow, and then a number designator. Um, and he got to the point where he trusted us because remember FIPRs, Force Protection
Mhm.
Intelligence reports.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we are if you, as long as you deliver, right, and then it turns into actionable intelligence, not just a fluff. The trust level goes up, and eventually these guys, these commanders, senior leaders, then become more hands off and basically say, "Here's your PIR, priority intelligence requirement. Now go do your thing," and that's it. And there's no
yeah,
oversight, and there's no supervision, so to speak, like a typical
no,
soldier would get supervision. Your squad leader, platoon leader, whatever. We didn't
yeah.
have that. We were autonomous, essentially the teams. And that's a struggle for some people that don't understand the mission.
The other thing is they wanted us to spend time coding those FIPRs. Which PR are you answering there? I don't know. I know what the
Yeah.
PIRs are, but you go do that shit. Like, I gotta go sleep. You guys working,
Well,
you know?
Y yeah, and what's interesting about that, I mentioned, a soldier earlier that was introvert, right? So it worked out for us because I'm not one that enjoys just sitting at the computer typing things up all day and processing, categorizing, cataloging, whatever. But this person was because they were an introvert. They didn't want to go out
Right.
and do the things we had to do. So it actually worked really well for our team, uh, to have that those different personalities in there. But yeah, you're right. They they wanted the details, and we're not necessarily details guys. We're more nuance guys and ambiguity guys.
Yeah. The other thing is with that report writing, you are writing to multiple audiences and you don't know when or how they'll receive the information and everything else. So it's very difficult to communicate clearly to all these unknown audiences. And then also like they'll take a line out of whatever you've given them and they'll use that and maybe completely remove the context from it. And you're like, oh, that's not what happened here, you
Yeah,
know? And so there's that thing too. And that makes it really hard to communicate these things clearly. I mean, look, honestly, I found out throughout my career, the harder part of the job was dealing with us. We were a bigger problem in the battlefield and we were a bigger problem on the camp then, and I say we, I mean all of us, the Americans, the coalition, all that.
Hmm.
We created more problems than we solved outside in the villages.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I don't know what the MOS is called today, but it used to be the 96 Bravos, right? So the analysts.
Right.
Um, that's why, if it all went well, we would do our thing, submit the report, and the analyst would analyze, right, and turn things into actionable intel, based off of context, based off of triangulations, based off of multiple sources or whatever the case is. Um, but that wasn't our job. That wasn't our job. Our job was to get assigned our PIRs and go collect as much information as we can on those. And that relationship didn't always work because the analyst, like you said, maybe there's pressure from a senior leader that's saying we need more information about this, and you know, so that pressure is like, yeah, well, maybe we just give them this, give them that, and
Yeah.
it's like, no, that's not full context. There, you're missing a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but you understand rank in the military, right? So if you got a commander, general, or a joint staff person just breathing down your neck, sometimes those analysts just produce, and it's not always accurate.
Yeah, not always accurate. The it's hard for them to see what we see, right? And one of the things that I started to develop, probably during Bosnia, but later on, was that the negative response to a PIR, there aren't any obvious threats here in this area, is actually intel. And it lets you know that, like, you can focus less here. But people don't like that. It's not sophisticated. And then that led me to, well, what is going on here? What else can we find? And I started looking away from the threat part and inventing my OPIRs, not because I didn't want to do their work, but I'm finding stuff that they would ask if they knew to ask, but they can't know
Hmm.
to ask. And so you can do things like, hey, if these things guys say they're struggling, that guy had 5 pigs. I would just add little notes like that. This guy I counted 15 chickens and 5 pigs, so that if you're working on the civil affairs side of this or whatever it's going to be, and that's just a tiny example. But if you go out and the belief is that there's no black market or there's black market fuel. And you're like, I just saw a gas station that's got state stamps all over it. If there's black market fuel, this guy, I can't seem to find it, whatever it is. Now you've got this thing like the black market is as much of a problem as you think it is. Or we're going to go stabilize this district in Afghanistan with farming knowledge. And it's all bullshit. If I'm a commander, I want to know if we're making bullshit happen. Wait, what do you mean it's all bullshit? These guys are reporting that they're doing a great job. And I'm like, hey, I'm just telling you, I talked to the guy who runs this stuff for Afghanistan. He is an Afghan, and he's like, I don't need this help. Stop helping me. And
Hmm.
so you do what you want to do, boss. You're the man. But they were desperate to get this information because nobody thinks to ask questions critical of us and what we're trying to provide. Are we providing stability? Well, let me go see if I can find it. Hey, sir, is your life more stable than before we got here or after? Oh, it was better when you guys weren't here. You know, you ran over 15 donkeys and nowhere paid for them. I don't care if it's true or not. If that's the perception of the village, then I can go find that and I can bring that back in. And then you can start to meter how we do things in town because you're losing if that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up an interesting point, um, which really goes to like we talked about earlier, the complexity of everything, right? So, um, to you, who you are on the ground, you're doing the work, right? So that vantage point is you know is one thing. To a commander, they want to provide that actionable intelligence so they could push it upstream to say, we're doing our job, and that kind of thing. So, using your pig example, right?
Mhm.
Um, guy has 3 pigs, 5 pigs, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you said pigs when you're talking about Afghanistan, but anyway,
I
uh,
was actually talking about Bosnia in my head, and
uh,
then I transitioned to Afghanistan.
yeah, I was like kind of chuckling inside, but regardless of the country. Um, So to you, you're on the ground, you understand that it's a farmer, you just got a couple extra pigs, there's no actionable intelligence there, right? But when you're getting pressure from an analyst from above and to an analyst and so forth, they might make something up using past precedents. So as an example,
Mm.
well, how many pigs did he have before? He only had 1 and now he has 5? That's a payment in many countries, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
a pig would equal wealth in many countries. So, where did that wealth come from? Well, he must have provided information about US troop movements to the Taliban, and they paid him or
Right.
whatever country, maybe
Yes.
Afghanistan's not the best example, but you get the point, right? So, it's a dangerous game when you're desperate to push actionable intelligence when, like you said earlier, maybe there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Trust your agents. Don't pull things out of context.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you're trying to provide context, if you have a question, ask me, right? And
Yeah.
and I'll provide you with the context. I'm giving you this. If you want me to look into the history of this guy's farming business, hey, that's an easy day for me. I'll go out and
Mhm.
drink, eat some of his food, we'll have a great time, and he'll tell me every single I can get that guy to tell me about his farming business easy as anything else. It's when they ask for hard shit like, "Who's the shadow governor?" I don't fucking know. How am I supposed to do that? Like, you want me to go out and ask, who's the excuse me, who's the shadow governor around here? You're like, "Yeah, can you do that in 2 days?" No. No, I can't.
Well,
You know?
yeah, and that's not counter intel either, right? So you're developing relationships.
Right.
So there's elicitation that requires nuance and relationship building, and there's direct questions. Who is the shadow guy? Well, that's a direct question. That doesn't work in our field. You got to build a relationship. You got to use elicitation. You got to massage it if you can use that term.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people on different timelines and different objectives, they don't understand it or care about that. They just want to know who is this or where is that. It just doesn't work that way with us.
It does not. The relationship thing is really the key, right? If you can build that trust, one of the things I learned to do, and look, just for anybody listening who's on the intel side, I'm a pro. Okay, so I'm being a pro here. I would invite the elders, the important people in Afghanistan, Iraq. I would invite them on the camp because I realized we always went to their house and ate their food, and 20 dudes would show up. Let me make this person the VIP, right? And so I would bring them on the camp. And not just that, I would say, hey, Mike's going to come on the camp. Mike Muhammad's going to come on the camp. And we're not going to search this guy. We're going to treat him like a VIP because that's exactly what he is. And then I'm going to walk into the chow hall. I'm going to feed him. I'm going to give him ice cream and let him take whatever he wants and give back to his kids. Because I want this guy to know that he's fucking important to me and he's my friend. And I would feed the fuck out of my friend too, right? So it would freak people out that I was bringing these guys on camp without searching them. And I'm like, this guy doesn't want to blow us up. By the way, I know this guy. So either I'm doing my job and there's always a risk, or I'm not. But I'm going to bring this guy on the camp. And the thing is once people got used to it, I would always work through the commander, I would never trick anybody and that kind of thing. I'd work through the entire chain. I'd give that E5 a chance.
Hmm.
Here's what I want to do. It's going to happen. Do you want to be the guy who makes it happen, or do I go above you and have it come down and you be told about it? I always gave them that chance. And I was like, please have them tell me. And I'm like, that's great, because they need to learn that part of that lesson. And I'd walk these guys right on, and then the NCO would be great. He'd be like, that's Pete. Get out of the way. That guy's an important guy. And they didn't even salute sometimes. I'm like, this is fucking what I want. Yes, you're helping me. And then I bring him in and I'd be like, what do you want? Hamburger, spaghetti? What do you want? Like, and not everybody liked it, but they didn't like it for logistics reasons a lot of times too. But that here's what that gave me. One, the commander always seemed to know when to walk through when I had these guys, and he would do a little commander handshake and be like, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for being our guest, and walk by. And then that guy's like, holy shit, I just met that commander. Maybe I'll make some money from him. All of these different things happen. And then their phone would ring all the time. And a lot of times they'd bring a man Friday with them. And so that guy would have the phone and he'd be talking. And so I would bring two interpreters, one to listen to that conversation and one to have the conversation with me. And it would be a gold mine of a meeting. Plus, Mike, you get the influence that you get from this kind of thing. Now I can be introduced to other people around town, and then that guy can be, and I would tell them, if you got somebody else you want to bring on the camp, then let's do it. Let's have us a little party. And then they're like, I got a guy I want to bring on. And so now they're bringing guys. I'm having meetings on our camp with guys he provides. It's incredible.
Yeah. I'm starting to have little flashbacks because we used to do. I mean, I know you did this too in Bosnia, um, with the mayors and the different levels of people. When they got onto the base camp, I mean, they were in awe of what was set up. how we operate, the efficiencies of everything. And they knew our mission, sitting right smack in the middle of the zone of separation, was peacekeeping, was to ensure that no more people were killed. And there's so many people were helpful because they believed that they knew what we were there for. They believed us, and and we didn't lie. Just tell them the truth. And Yeah, people just open up, and if you treat them with respect. So one quick example, I don't know, did you ever make it up to Camp McGovern?
I don't believe so. We made it around to a lot
Okay.
of places, but I don't think we got there.
So one example is we worked with civil affairs, and there was a
Mhm.
local Bosnian restaurant in the town of Brka, BRC, BR, BRKA, I believe it was. Anyway, Google it, Brka, just east of, or just west rather of, or Birchko. And
Mm.
so we created um, a Cafe ZOS, and it was right on our base camp, and they made chivapi and local stuff. And then eventually they figured out pretty quickly how to make hamburgers and cheeseburgers and things like that. And so it was a quid pro quo because they were making money off us GIs because we loved their food. It was different from chow hall food, definitely better than MREs. And they had no problem sharing information. Um, it's kind of like I said, a quid pro quo, just helping each other,
Yeah.
reciprocity, if you will. And um, yeah, why not do that? It
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. One of the things that I know Greg and I did, and Greg McGowan wrote a screenplay about our time, and it's like based on true events and everything. It's still a screenplay. You got to make the story work. But if we could find a way to make life on camp better for our soldiers, I felt obligated to do it. And so if I could get, if I could steal somebody's MWR guy who was on a different camp and wasn't doing his job, you better
Yeah.
fucking believe I'm gonna get that guy. I'm gonna get him like, hey, I'm gonna get you a great room. Don't worry about it. I've got booze. I can make things happen. And so you do become this like gray market, really, for all these different things. Like, how can I get a shitload of VHS tapes for our MWR? Oh, the MWR guy can get a whole shitload of. He's got a whole Connex full of them. Jesus
Hmm.
Christ, let me get him to. So you did things like that to improve your value on the camp, but also could I flip that and connect the camp to the town? And obviously within reasons and legally and everything else, you don't want to like create a millionaire off the
Sure.
camp. These things allow you to be, well, one, to operate on the camp, which is fucking hard because everybody's trying to take a bite out of your time. But two, the ability to meet the person you're not supposed to meet because you get introduced by somebody is probably the hardest and most valuable thing you can do as a collector in a dangerous area.
Yeah, I mean, it's the equivalent is in corporate America. There's networking events for that very reason. I mean, different mission, obviously, but
Right.
you meet somebody, they introduce you to somebody, you move up the ladder, you move around whatever. It's the same principle, um, but unless you're doing unless you understand that, and obviously you've lived it. It's difficult to articulate that to others unless you start using non-military, non-counter intel type of terminology, like, oh, it's like a business networking. If you start speaking that language, if you will, then they start to kind of understand that better. To you, it's instinctual, right? You don't have to think about it. You've done it so much, it's instinctive. But to others, you gotta speak a different language, not a foreign language, but you get what I point, different lexicon to help them understand those nuances.
What did you get better at as a collector? Obviously, outgoing, likable guy, funny, all those things, right? Those are all good, but but you have to get technical. You have to get elegant. You have to find those smooth corners that you need to take the rough edge out of if you're filing through some practice. What did you pick up from other agents? Got the other thing too. You watch somebody else's judo and you're like, I never thought about that. And then you have this new tool.
Yeah. Great question. Let me think about that because my first instinctive answer isn't a skill set type of answer. It's more of a humanity. So what did I, what did I sharpen? What did I improve? Um, my humanity.
Wow.
And I know that's not exactly what you asked, but that's kind of, and
It's a good answer, though.
I'm gonna stand up for just a second and move because I'm outside and it's starting to rain. So I
I
think
love
I
it.
need to move just a little bit here.
That's all right. Yeah, that
So
humanity part is huge because you can't lose your humanity and relate to humans, right? Like, the more you can relate and be relatable, the more you can understand that this is the cultural part that they don't really teach us. Someone who has, boy sex on Friday in Iraq as an elder is not doing that because they're a horrible person. They're doing that because that's the environment they grew up in, and these are the things that happen. So we would look at that and be like, oh, and that's the other thing. As a spy, you can't be like, oh, I'm offended. Like, you can't. There's nothing that can offend you. You don't have
no,
to agree with it, but you have to be able to be hit with anything because these folks live in a horrible, unstable place. And so if you look around a lot, you're going to find a lot of horrible, evil things.
yeah, and one example, there's a town called Gorny Rahich, again west of Birchko, and there was a lot of people living in, let's just call it squalor. You've seen the blown up buildings, and so they'll move into a blown up building and put a couple of tarps up or whatever, and then they invite you into their home,
Yeah.
and they will give you everything they have, which is so humbling.
Yeah.
And then you'll hear their story, right? And so you're on your mission. You got to collect some information to fit a PIR. Um, but then you hear their story about how their son was killed, and the uncle was killed, and the sister was killed, and the grandma was killed, and the grandpa was killed, and um, that can there's no way that doesn't affect your humanity and
Right.
your and you got to compartmentalize that, right? Because you still have to do your job and get information. And that's where some of us, I don't, um, it hits you later in life. And maybe that's called PTSD. I don't know. I am not an expert in that area. But that kind of stuff hits you in life, hits you later in life. Um, so, that was a long answer to your question of what sharpened, but yeah, definitely my humanity, my, to look at my blessings that that I had then and I have now,
Right.
and just really respect people at all stations in life. That was a great little byproduct of the deployment. In terms of like skill, um, you know, we had some pretty sharp individuals, pretty clever individuals who, the old saying, this person could sell ice to Eskimos or sand to Saudis or, whatever the case is. There's some folks where, I mean, they were like Jedi level, and to watch people like that in action, you can't help but be in awe because it's such a nuance to do all this. Um, and so I learned a lot from others for sure, and not going to get into too much in names or whatever, but there's a couple individuals that were pretty dang sharp.
Yeah.
And I kind of look back and I wish I would have been able to work with you. That
Ah.
that would have been fun because I think you were a team leader as well, weren't you?
No,
Yeah.
I was just a knucklehead. I was a knucklehead with
Were
a
you?
team leader that let me go out and do my job, and he knew enough to kinda guide us. It was actual
Oh,
NCO. He was a horrible look, Bart Datsker was not the best person in the world. He had a lot of personal flaws and got kicked off our camp and everything else, but
uh,
when it comes to
that's
NCOs, he
funny.
might
You
have been.
said his name when you said Bart earlier.
Yeah,
I was thinking that uh,
yeah.
I could. We're not going to talk about Bart,
I
but
don't dislike Bart. I can say this because I worked with the man, but he's a lot of challenges, right? And so maybe in my mind, he knew that Greg and I had rapport with people automatically because we're folksy. And so he didn't mind sitting back. Plus, he spoke Polish, so he could understand kind of what
right.
was going on in the conversation. And he always, I don't trust anybody. And so he let us go out and do what we did. And that was just be goofy dudes. But at that, it worked. It worked. because we were left alone to do this, and we both didn't mind the work. Neither of us were introverts. We weren't scared to go off the camp. We were able to do it. So yeah, you and I, we would have done great. We would have gone over the place, had a great time,
Yeah,
drank a lot. You know,
yeah.
yeah.
Rakia and
Oh
Shlivovica.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Bart would
so
do this thing, right? And this is where that humanity and that honesty comes in. He'd be like, "Do you want some whiskey?" And he'd make these weird faces, and I'm like, "Dude, just don't stop with that shit," you know? Like, and he would lie to people, and I'm like, "I can see that you're lying on your face. These guys are way more fucked up than I am, so I know they think you're lying because they start there. So quit with the fucking lying. Tell the damn truth." Or tell a version of the truth that isn't as open as you want it to be.
yeah,
Hey, my name is Pete. Yes, I'm here to ask questions. Yeah, you want to call me a spy? That's exactly what I am. If I ever ask you a question you don't want to answer, don't answer it. I'm not here to hurt anybody. And when you say that to people, they lighten the fuck up.
yeah. We had a warrant officer that was wanted to be a counter intel guy. He was a linguist.
Oh boy.
And you know where that's going, right?
Yeah.
These people that are trained a certain way but want to do the mission that we did,
Yeah.
you could see them a mile away. People could read through them a mile away. They just, and that goes back to, I mean, this is such a, or it was rather, such a complex thing that you can't really define it in a DA-PAM or regulation or
Yeah.
some type of TRADOC school doctrine. Um, yeah, Bart, I'm still laughing about that. And there's a couple others that were some doozies.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know
Well,
what
our
else
field.
too is
Yeah.
is they we needed to maintain a solid reputation. And there were individuals that would come in and just trash a week or 2 weeks worth of work that we
Mhm.
do with one stupid act or a couple of stupid lines that they said, and it just ruined it because it's back to relationships, right? This doesn't happen overnight, and you don't need somebody coming in to just screw it all up unintentionally, ignorantly, not with malevolence or anything, but because it's such a gray area, it's delicate. The fabric is delicate on what we did, and it was easily torn with individuals that were just tools.
And you're talking, I don't know which way you're talking, but that could be off camp or on camp. Like one person doing something on camp can jeopardize your ability to go operate, right? And then, and you got to be honest. If you and I go and we do our deployment, it could be that time we drank too much bites us in the ass. Because there are times like you try to control it. You try to have one guy who's kind of sober. You still got two vehicles to get back. You got a head full of information. You're trying to focus, but you're also drunk, and a team is going to fuck up. It's just going to happen. And you as an NCO or him or her as a warrant officer needs to be like, my guy's fucked up. I got it. It's my job. Take care of this. We do a job that, look, getting drunk and smashing your RV or Humvee into something is kind of minor. We fuck up, we get people killed, so, and it's going to happen. I mean, I know for sure in my time in Iraq, we killed the wrong people. And I couldn't do it either. I didn't have the skill to do anything about it, didn't know about it till later on, or was unable to convince the army to not kill that person. And that's what happens when we get it wrong. People die. So yeah, drinking, but you got to be able to cover that as a leader. And maybe those soldiers are out of control and someone needs to come in and tighten it up. And that's fair. But that is part of what we do when it doesn't go perfectly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that you had to go through that in Iraq. Those are things that leave scars, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Those are the things that don't go away. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. Um, you know, I was talking about off base,
Yeah.
but you bring up a great point about on base too, because we did have privileges, and the minute we screwed up,
Hmm.
they would love to be very quick and happy to pull those privileges
Yeah. Yeah.
and talk about us in a negative way, because they think, oh, these guys think they're better than everybody and everything else. Oh, look at them. When you get put up on a pedestal like that, people are just itching to see you fail. So yeah, we did have to. That's why I was saying earlier, the fabric is thin,
Yeah.
and so many things can go wrong. And worst case scenario, as you articulated, somebody dies,
Mhm.
and then you are scarred for life because you couldn't do anything about it, or you find out that your source was killed because they were talking to you. Um,
Right.
that'll leave a mark.
Yeah.
So there's definitely challenges in that for sure.
We had a guy in Iraq who owned a shop that butted up against our part of the camp, and he had a leather shop, and we would all buy our holsters and stuff from there. And his shop was on a little strip of red zone between 2 camps, and I mean, like, as wide as a street, and so he was on the old airport, and, the for whatever reason, the bad guys got wind that he was talking to the Americans, partly because he was selling us gear every day, you know? And, so they came and they warned him, and then they came back and they roughed him up, and then they came back and gouged his eyes out, you know? And that's what you're fighting against, right? I mean, you're fighting against people that will go and gouge someone's eyes out before they come back and kill them later on. I mean, that's there's Bert checking in. Hey, Bert, what's up? I love Bert. Um, we have to deal with those demons too. That if we don't get this right, it's not just preventing the car bomb from coming to the gate, which has happened on my camp. You're like, boom, car bomb. Well, I guess fuck, we missed that one. You know, that car bomb blew up so close to our office. There was a Jersey barrier, a big old tall concrete wall for everybody listening. That pieces of that dude in his car rained down on our little, when I say courtyard, what was the wall and the space between us and the wall, and it smelled horrible. And you're like, God damn, I can't believe we dodged that bullet. Some Iraqi Jindis died that day. The Americans, for some dumb lucky reason, were not out in front like they often would be. Um, but that's on us, right? Like we didn't find that. That's our job. And that fucking hurts, man. That hurts forever. You never lose that. You're like, how did we miss that? That chow hall that got blown up, that was on the other
Mhm.
camp. That's on
Yeah.
us. And the first call made was, hey, did you guys talk to this guy? Did you let him on the camp? It started there. But if you work in that field long enough, bad things are gonna happen.
Yeah. You remember the IPTF,
Say it
International
again.
Police Task Force?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, so there's a movie made, and I forget the name of the movie, and it could be easily Googled. Uh, it was about a young woman that was sex trafficked over there during the time we were there.
Yeah.
Um, and the IPTF, not all of them, so let me just make that clear preface. Not all of them, obviously, but the IPTF had a pretty good budget. They were paid by Dynacor.
Mm.
They made some good money, and they had a housing allowance. They would stay off base camp in apartments and stuff, and they'd hire local national girls, unfortunately, to clean their house. Is what housekeeping is essentially what they said, but they were uh, sex trafficking. And there was a U.S. contractor that got involved. She got involved in that, and like I said, they made a movie after it, or about it rather. But my point is, um, when there's so much that happens under our noses that when we're focused on a specific PIR, right, we got to find out about X. There's so much going around, but our focus is on completing that mission, getting that information. Um, and all of a sudden, something happens, something horrific, like people die, get blown up, or a woman gets sex trafficked and stuff. You can't help but feel guilty, like you missed it. You should have seen that. You should have
Yeah.
reported something. Um, but kind of when it happens right under your nose, right? But you don't even see it,
Yeah.
and because it's not your focus, it's not your point of emphasis. We have to live with that, and those are just some probably just one example for you of many, one example for me of many. But that's another thing for some people to not quite understand um, unless you experience it. Shaking hands with a devil, looking pure evil in the eye is incomprehensible to those that have never done it. And for those that have done it, it scars you. You can see the darkness in someone's eyes, when they've killed 300 people. or they murdered a village, or they raped everything in sight, and then you have to put a smile on your face and shake their hand.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's that stuff is crazy.
My buddy Rich and I had my system set up and I was really fucking good at my job. And I could tell the commander the future. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how I'm going to do it. Here's what you're going to get. Here's what you're going to say. And all those things would come true because I knew what the fuck I was doing. And he came in and he added the academic element to what I was doing. And we really were doing incredible things. And we were introduced to all these different groups. And we spent a long time working on this one particular question, not a PIR per se, but a PIR. How do we do education in Afghanistan better? Right.
Hmm.
And so the Afghans sat us down and they had a religious leader. And this is the thing that nobody ever did. Like, if the Afghans are going to do something, there's someone accounting for religion there. And if that person's
Yeah,
not there, it's an American meeting. And
you
it's not
got
being
the imam involved, you're good to go.
right. So that guy's there. Family elders who can speak for other family elders are there. These are guys that we've met not through direct contact, but through several introductions. And we've got the Ministry of Education dude from Afghanistan there. And and this whole product takes months to build, to put together. And here's what they
Right.
say. They say, under no circumstances should you ever deliver books to kids. It is dangerous, it is inappropriate, and it is not your spot. It is that guy's spot. And they point at the Ministry of Education. And he's like, that's right. That's my job. And then he's like, you will never deliver books directly to me. I have trucks. I have people. I will come to you. I want your books. I want your help. I want these things, but I have to do it on my terms. And we're like, okay, write it down. And there was a couple other, things like, this is where we want your help. We want you to help us study how we do, how we perform. We want other areas. We want to work forward and talk about these things and get better at this. We're desperate for our kids to be educated. A year after I leave, State Department goes out on a fucking photo op, and guess what the fuck they're doing? They're
Handing out
delivering
books.
yeah, and they got blown up, and interpreters died, service members died, and State Department people died. And then, I just makes me so mad. Someone like John Kerry, as Secretary of State, stands up and gives this bullshit eulogy talking about how you can't force people to do things. And I'm like, you just did that. You are that. You guys, they had the report. This is the same street that we were on when we found all this out and put all this information together. And they went out and everybody got our reports. People who were there when we were there were still there. And they didn't go, hey, we shouldn't do that. We have an agreement with the Afghans. Went out and they did that. And they got blown up and people died for a stupid reason. And that also, man, I mean, that's the thing that really keeps me up at nights is like all the other stuff. And believe me, there's a lot of people that have
Yeah.
died where I've
Yeah.
worked because we work in dangerous places. But that one, it was prevented. It didn't have, maybe they would have died that day no matter what, but not for that reason. That shouldn't have happened, and that kind of stuff, man, that must happen to if you're good at all being off, you're going to have something like that happen to you. I don't know, far too many times to count. It's too many times.
Yeah, I mean, it's intentions, right? So their intentions were good.
Yeah.
They didn't talk to the right people before they did it. Um,
And they probably ignored whatever information we had, because we have that amnesia. Whatever happened a year ago, we don't care about.
oh, sure, we don't care. And what's the mission? Oh, we needed to get some good pictures taken, photo op, like you
Yeah.
said, right? So
Yeah.
that's the
A dude flew
focus.
from Kandahar to go to Zabul. And why? Because they had to go out. What we're doing here, And
Yeah,
that's the patently ridiculous thing. So let me do my job, but also pay the fuck attention. This is serious business,
yeah,
Let me ask you this. Okay, so you're an NCO, you're trying to bring up young agents. Not an easy job to train because they don't give you any budget money. You really can't go into town or do anything because people get fired up about that. How do you develop a young agent? How do you develop and figure out what kind of agent they are? Because maybe you need to guide them towards becoming a strategic debriefer. Maybe they need to go be an MDCI guy or whatever it's going to be, right? How do you, as an NCO, guide a young emerging counterintelligence agent?
not e um, and, it's only because, as we're still learning too. You can do a great job in one country and you get sent to the next country and it's a totally different game,
Right.
different culture, different religions. So you got to adjust, um, your style, so to speak. But what we did have a couple of young agents, especially because we were there for a year. We had a little bit of turnover, and we get some new people come in. We get some new people from different base camps in the country, and uh, when someone is thrown into a extremely difficult situation with little training and experience, what do you think their typical default is? It's rhetorical, but what do you
Yeah.
think their typical default is? It's human nature. That's their default, right? So when someone's thrown in a really difficult, tense, high anxiety, potentially deadly situation with little to no training, little to no experience, their defaults come out. And you can tell some of these folks have it and some of them don't. So the ones that don't, it's not their fault, because this is all new to them and they're trying to learn. But it just kind of goes back to basic leadership. You capitalize their strengths and you cover down on their weaknesses. You don't set them up for failure by putting them in a situation where their weaknesses are going to, you know, come to the surface. Um, so you just continuously using that introvert example. If you can tell right away where someone's going to be uncomfortable in a situation, talking to high level officials, right? Well, then you don't put them on point. When you have a female in our culture, females are equal to or better than us sometimes, no issues. When you have a female overseas and if you put her in a situation, a meeting with a bunch of men, depending on the culture, you're setting her up for failure. Doesn't matter if she has the knowledge, skills, and abilities to knock it out. You're setting her up for failure.
Right.
So yeah, like I said, it's complex, it's difficult, and a lot of it's trial by error. And you just got to be keen. You got to be honed into their human nature, because it's going to come out, and then you just capitalize from there.
That thing on females is great because females can be incredible collectors, but they need to be guided by great collectors as well. Because there's things that they can get to, and I look at them and I'm just like agog, like how in the hell did you do that? Like and literally it can just be sitting in the room because they'll become invisible, or everybody will be so drunk with a chick being there
Yeah,
that they'll just run and go and go. I'm like, just get them talking. I'll take notes. Just be you. But you need to understand that, and you also need to be willing to be seen as something that you are not. Just like we have to look evil in the eye and be like, that ain't that bad. I've heard worse. Let's go. Let's keep talking, devil.
yeah. You only killed 300 people.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I know this other guy.
yeah.
He
You
bombed an
go,
entire
you
village.
go down on him. You go down on killing 300 people. Like, I'll tell you what I killed. I'll tell
Yeah,
you. Yeah. That female thing, right? Especially in the Islamic countries. If I was going out with a female field partner, and because I'm the senior guy, no matter who I go out with, I'm like, look, I've been around. You're gonna do this whatever way you want to do it, but I'm gonna tell you this as a female. I would think hard about don't wear any kind of hair covering. I know you've been taught to do that. It's not a good idea because your hair will drive them crazy. They will see you in a different way, and you can outfox these guys in 2 seconds if you just do that because you're not Islamic. And like, well, no, it's offensive. No, it is not. No, it is not. They know you're from America. They know, and if they think you are a whore and they go down that route, put them in a box and make them pay for it. Just squeeze all the information out of them. They would love it, but not for everybody, right? But that's the advice you got to give. Like you have this
yeah,
enormous advantage. Your hair will drive them bananas. It is an intoxicant to them, and yeah, you got to be able to. I had a Mormon guy come through the SIFTO course, and he's like, "Well, I would never drink if I was offered a drink." And I'm like, "You need to think about doing a different part of this job then, because you have to be people's lives. I promise, in your gospel, God will forgive you if you're working and doing something for the greater good. If you have to consume alcohol, and if you don't believe that that's true, find something else. Lead teams, let them do it, but you have to be able to drink in this job. Have to.
yeah. Do you remember the first Jason Bourne movie?
Yes.
When he was trying to get information, he had this elaborate plan to have it. I can't remember the actress's name or the his
Yeah.
female
Yeah.
that he was with. And he's like, all right, we're going to do this, and this. I need you to go in here and sit down here and observe this and do this, you know, check for surveillance, counter surveillance, da 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 da.
Yeah.
She goes in there, goes right up to him and kind of flirts a little bit and gets the information. She walks out and he's trying to call her and she's already got all the information. He
Yeah.
was just dumbfounded, right? Because he was trained, a
Yep.
totally different way, and she used her natural skills.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything disgusting. It doesn't have to be anything disgusting.
Yeah.
So to be clear, for all the the female agents out there, for anybody listening that doesn't understand that, it is not uh, doing anything. Um, how do you phrase it? It's not doing anything disgusting. It's just using your strengths,
Right.
and capitalizing on that, like you said, for the greater good.
Yeah.
Because you may have tried to get information to save, 300 people, but they won't talk to you because
Yeah.
you're a man. Next thing you
Mhm.
know, your female agent walks in and just does a little smile, a little smirk, just
Yeah.
that little smile. And next thing you know, they're like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Here's all the intel you need. You
Yeah.
know, like you said, they're drunk on, they're intoxicated on, something that they don't get to see.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's difficult, but and then we got to be protective of that as well, and be
Of course.
cautious of that. But I know you are or were.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's actually a superpower that women have.
Yeah, no, really, they are, I think, pound for pound, minute for minute, better collectors than dudes, just because they've been collectors their entire lives. They understand danger, things that we don't have to deal with. We've got to be a little more direct and have to use other tools that we're not necessarily good at doing, like humanity. Boy, men are sucky at humanity a lot of times. So we get
Yeah.
stuck. One of the things that I wanted to get into, and I know we're going a little long, but it's just too good to stop. So I'm going to make you go a little longer. I became a master at working with interpreters because I didn't look at that person as a machine. It is not I talk, you stand here. It's like you are an extension of me. I need you to become an extension of that person and have a conversation. And here's what I'm going for. Here's what I'm trying to do. And I would teach them everything I wanted them to do. And if
Hmm.
I could shut up the entire meeting and let that person do what they did naturally, just like those ladies, man, I it's so great. I'm just writing notes. Just every now and then, give me a back brief, and I'll write notes as fast as I can. I've already shown you what I need. Go get it. If you need to get it in a different way, I've had too many meetings where agents get something. I'm like, I wouldn't have gone that way. But it's like the shooting a three at the buzzer. You're like, no, no, no. Oh, wait, yes, okay. It's like that. We're like, if you're gonna get it, I don't care how you get it. Just fucking get it, and I'll write it down, and we'll write the reports, and you can go chill. But that's not how people are taught to do it, and it's a terrible disservice to the people that are in the interpretation business, people that are in information collection business, that we don't have professional level. Here's how you work as an interpreter. Here's how you work with an interpreter, and here's how the two of you work together. Should be courses that you graduate through and get certified before you ever go into town. You have to. I have to be able to give someone an IV and go to a week-long course to become a combat lifesaver. I've never given an IV in combat, but I've had thousands and thousands of conversations. I never had to go to a course where someone taught me how to do anything with an interpreter. One more thing on interpreters. If you're my interpreter, especially if you're an American or a guy who's lived in America longer than most of these service members have been alive, if anybody crosses you, say yes, get their name, find out what unit they're in, and I'm going to go fucking bring down hellfire on them. Don't ever fucking get in my guy's face. Don't ever attack my guy. Don't ever accuse me. You don't care if he's a Rocky. And I'll give him a chance. Like, you square this thing away. You better apologize right to my guy's face. Don't ever do that to him again. If you got a problem with that, we'll go see the boss right now and we'll see who wins this fight. Because where do you work again? Oh, you the mayor cell? Okay. We'll see who wins. Because I know the commander knows me. Hey, I got to have my guy left alone. If we're fucking with him on the camp, he's going off the camp every day. Everybody needs to get the fuck. Just leave him the fuck alone. Don't give him special access. But I was deaf on that, Mike. I did not like people fucking with my interpreters at all. And I let people know, don't fuck with him. This guy's on our side. He's lived in, whatever, Florida for 30 years. You're 24. So who's more of an American?
Yeah. You bring up some great points, and it's collection by proxy, right?
Yeah.
So your interpreter is your proxy agent, and they can be very valuable, in that regard. But it's still it has to be. I'm trying to think of the word. Um, I mean, it's a partnership, right? Um, and going back to what we did, back in the '90s, we paid a lot of, relative to the times, we paid a lot of money, 1,000 Deutschmarks a month. And I remember when we were trying to get interpreters in, and they found out that we were going to pay them 1,000 Deutschmarks a month, which by today's terms is nothing, right?
Yeah.
To them, war-torn countries, post war, That's a lot. That was a lot. And we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds line up to get interviewed. Um, and part of that interview process was obviously what's their skill set in terms of the native language and English.
Yeah.
Um, but when you have that many, you want to get the good speakers through, and then from there you want to go, how will they work with the agents? Are they going to go native, so to speak, and just kind of do their own thing, and then give you bits and pieces? That's not going to work.
Right.
Um, but once you got the good ones, and we ended up getting the good ones, we got some really good ones, um, incredible professionals. Um, then, and you got, I would imagine you got assigned yours. I was assigned one, so I had an interpreter. Um, Absolutely overprotective of that person.
Yeah.
Because without the interpreter, you're nothing. And
Yeah.
the language abilities for me anyways, the crash courses that we had to take and so forth
Yeah. Yeah.
was, elementary at best. Uh, and
And
so
the
when
latest is you spend a week learning some Pashto, go to a Dari speaking area or whatever it's going to
yeah,
be. Just send me to the course where I learned how to work with an interpreter, foreign or domestic, whatever it's going to be, you
mhm,
know? And then, yeah, teach me how to manage that person. Cause I promise it might sound like I was collecting by proxy and not doing anything. I had control of the entire meeting. That was my meeting. My guy knew what to do. We worked hard on that,
exactly.
you
But
know?
it took you time to develop that, right?
It for sure
Um,
did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why you become, because you're invested, that's why you become protective,
Yeah.
overprotective.
Right.
And I think the overprotection is a good thing. It's kind of like with children or grandchildren, you're overprotective. Um, you are invested, and your life's at risk, and therefore their life's at risk. So it's something that is difficult. I don't know. For me, anyways, it's something that's difficult to articulate the relationship,
Yeah.
but it is a special one, and when you get a good one, y- y- you do not want them to ever go away.
Yeah.
You want to keep them for the entire mission.
No, for sure, for sure. And you have to learn to take care of them. I'm not even proud to say this, but it took me so long to figure it out. But my guy Fareed and I were out, and Fareed's an American. He lives down the road from where I grew up. Right, he's been there forever and ever, but he lives overseas to take care of his family. And I told you about the Turner Challenge. I work hard, and so I got him out in the field. He's humping, and when I'm doing stuff he can't do, he can go do whatever he wants. But he's like, Pete, can we go back to the camp? I need some time on the camp. And I'm like, why? What's going on, man? You okay? And he's like in his 50s, right? Humping every day. And he's like, I haven't had a good meal in weeks. And I'm like, what are you
Mm,
talking about? We have food every night. He's like, I can only eat some of the things in this chow hall.
mm.
And I'm like, God damn. And I'm like, what if we just ate next door at the Afghans? And he's like, oh, that's great. I'll do that all day long. We don't got to leave. That's the case. But I'd missed it. I'd missed it that he was not able to eat the whatever the Pronto pup or the hot dog thing or the with this thing or and he was not
Well,
terribly religious, but he was religious.
yeah. I mean, in halal food, how much of the chow hall preparation was,
Yeah.
in accordance with their religious principles.
And our supplies were airdropped in, so there were a
Yeah,
lot of things he didn't have.
yeah,
So
and
these things matter.
that presents a challenge. You probably know, or at least have heard that we had 13,000 Afghan refugees come to our area in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Um, and that was a challenge from the beginning, is getting contractors in to provide food for them that they could, um, not tolerate, but they could eat.
yeah,
Which to us is like, okay, just eat it. No, it is so much more complex than that. There was a young girl. I think she was approximately 8 or 9 years old. She had cerebral palsy, and they were carrying her around in their arms because they literally evacuated with nothing.
wow.
And those that were able to take their suitcases, a lot of those suitcases were lost in the sauce, gone forever. Who knows where they are?
Mhm.
So they had the clothes on their back. And that's it. So when you have a young girl with special needs, um, and they're carrying her around, we thankfully identified that situation pretty quickly. Got them a stroller and everything. But it turns out they were begging for um, and they didn't call it Similac, but it's essentially it was Similac.
Right.
The baby food, the flakes and stuff like that, because she couldn't eat. So not only was it not halal, but she couldn't eat the food that they were giving her.
Right.
So they were struggling, and there were so many so quickly that she was getting kind of forgotten. And I think by the grace of God, we were able to, find her and take care of her. There's a generous lady from our church. It was extremely generous because I guess the Similac is very expensive per can, and this is pre baby formula shortage. I don't know if you heard about
Yeah.
that. It was insane. But in any case,
Yeah.
long story short, there's so much need out there, um, and you got to be invested to see it and be able to help. And it sounds like you took care of your guy, which is a noble thing to do for sure.
Yeah, but it took a long time. It took me a long, long, long time, partly because, there's no training on that stuff and how to do it. All the
Yeah.
training is don't trust them, look for deceit, treat them like a machine. And that's all bullshit. These are human, like back to the whole humanity thing. This guy's a human.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, if you were my interpreter and I came out to Wisconsin, right, where you're from, and Wisconsin in your bones, and I tried to out Wisconsin you, I'd lose. Never try to out Iraq and Iraqi. You never try to out Wisconsin and Wisconsinite or Wisconsin or whatever the heck you guys are. Never
I
try
know
to
where
do
they
that.
hide the cheese curds, man. You don't know where they hide the cheese curds, but I do.
But you probably could tell if someone's from, whatever, like Milwaukee, or, they're from Green Bay, or they're from the Dells. You probably could tell that by the way they talk, and not necessarily accent, but just the way they talk, or if that person lives right across the street from Road America, you'd be like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. And unless you have
Yeah.
that specific knowledge, you you have no business. They always teach us to like ape people's culture. Don't do that. Be yourself, and be receptive to their culture. Ask them about it. Ask them how
Sure.
they Christmas, or how is Ramadan here? What's one of the greatest things about Ramadan you'd love for me to experience? Why don't you come over tonight? Oh, well, I don't mind if I do. And then you come
Right.
over and you go do Ramadan with them, right? But we get taught to ape, and aping ain't good.
And so you're talking about memory making, right? So you're
Yeah,
doing the mission, right? But what you're doing is you're a goodwill ambassador, and you're making memories for everybody you encounter that you treat that way.
yeah,
So these folks that you took care of, and um, you engaged with them and respected who they were. To this day, they remember Pete. They will
they will.
remember Pete, and they will remember that time that Pete did this or Pete did that or Pete said this. Um, you're memory making, and that's an honorable thing. And it takes a special kind of person to do that. And I would say that it's difficult, not impossible, but difficult for people in different lines of work. As an example, infantry or cavalry or things like that. Difficult for them to take the time and invest because they see things so differently. Their mission is to kick down the door and take everybody out. So they don't have time to engage and to show that cultural respect and
Yeah,
appreciation. Um, and they're making different memories, unfortunately, but or in some cases, fortunately. But I
yeah.
think your examples were, you made some good memories for those
This is
people.
this is part of that game, right? Like, how do you gain entry into these circles? And it's by allowing them to be smart. You should be learning every day that you're out there. And I would tell my interpreters, one of the tricks I would do, and I didn't do many tricks, but this was one of them. I would say, hey, Mike, sometimes I'm going to ask a question. I know the answer to it. I want you to ask that question. And inevitably, the interpreter would look at me like, Pete, you know this. And I'd be like, yeah, I know it. I need you to ask the question because the question is a door. I want you to open that door. And they'd be like, oh, that's right. I forgot, but we'd be
Tr
so in the mix.
Trust me, I know what I'm doing.
Right. But that's how
Yeah,
tight we were in the mix. They'd forget that. And then it'd be
yeah,
like about Ramadan or whatever. And I also had the other things I would do, like when we would get the pat answer, hey man, what's going on here in Iraq? Like how are things going? Like what are a couple of problems we should be working on to know about? And if they were like Maku Karaba, bad water, bad electricity, I would look at my buddy, Night Train, and I was like, And he'd be like, Pete's looking at me because everybody says bad electricity, bad water. What are we supposed to do about that? What's the smallest thing we could do right now? What can I tell the commander right now? What can I tell the Iraqi official right now that we could change today? And they'd
Mhm.
be like, oh, since you mean to ask it like that. And that piece, Mike, that piece, that's actionable intel right there.
Yep. And
We
and
can
it's
fix.
it's not your words, it's your actions,
Yeah. Right.
which are more powerful than anything you could possibly say to them. You know, you heard them, you
Yep.
acted, you delivered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that simple.
And if you trick that system a little bit and you say, can you go to the government center tomorrow? We'll meet you there with the governor, and say it right to his face. And then there's a performance, right? And then the governor's like, well, what are you going to do about that army guy? And the army guy's going to be like, I'm sorry, we'll do it tomorrow, whatever it is, right? And then
Right.
you look at that guy and you're like, okay, you went to the government and something good happens. Then Pete goes back a week later. Hey, what was the last thing the government did for you? Not a fucking thing. Well, okay, great. We got to try again. But they might go, you know what? I went to the Americans, I went to the governor, and they fixed a problem for me. And if we can't do that enough. Like, we can't
Yeah.
do that enough. And that may not sound sexy in the world of spies, but I'll tell you what, that's a win. It's a big win.
Might not sound sexy. Yeah, there wasn't too much that was sexy with what we did. It was all
Sexy. Yeah. Yeah, I've been crushing on you for about an hour and a half. Do you want to ask me anything before we get done here?
um what was your best memory of our deployment? Or one of your best one of the good
Yeah.
memories?
There's a lot of good ones, man. I mean, I ultimately there's a lot of hard things. I met my future I best way to say is I met the lady who was going to be the daughter, my daughter's mother. I can't even
Try
say
to
it.
speak English this time.
Yeah,
Or
and I don't
go
consider
ahead.
her my ex-wife because she's not my ex-wife. She's part of my family, right? And so we still to this day get along great. So that's obviously probably the highlight. But just the day to day going out with Greg and our ability to get what we were going to do, and there was no ego involved. We were always on the road, and just everything was us just doing this dance and being able to do it. And it was just so cool because it was so rare that I got to have a really good partner. And ultimately, I usually didn't have a partner because it was just too. It's like having a black belt and a white belt, like let me just go do this myself, But when you had a great partner and you really are vibing and you're smarter, the two of you are smarter than you can be individually. Those were the magic moments, no matter where I was, Bosnia, Egypt, Iraq, wherever I was. Those were the moments where you're like, man, this is really cool that we get to do this, and we're making a difference. And look, I'm not an infantry guy, but I think in the modern wars, guys like us were more important, because the infantry look, judging upon our performance, we haven't picked the right shots to win. And I don't care who you are. It's funny, like they're talking about all these service members that are going to get kicked out because they're not going to get a shot. And
The
this is not a
vax.
political statement, but why do we have a bunch of generals that are losers getting paid a lot of money? I mean, look, maybe they all got a shot, but those guys also all lost, and they don't have a simple course like an interrogator course or interpreter course. So where's the culpability? I mean, corporations are hiring these guys to consult with them. And God bless Secretary Austin. Great. I've sat in the same room with that dude, and he's screwed up the Iraq withdrawal and he's screwed up the Afghanistan withdrawal. At some point, you got to be like, hey, man, give someone else a chance. Maybe infantry guys shouldn't lead the mission anymore. Why are infantry guys engaging with humans anyhow?
Mm.
Everything should be on the table when it comes to how we fight in modern fights. I'm not trying to put anything on you, word wise, but these are the big questions we got to ask. Like, what do we do different?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna get into that because as
Yeah.
you probably know, I mean, I'm still working for Uncle Sam, Uncle
Yeah.
Joe. Um, but you bring up an interesting point for sure. These uh, senior leaders, as I'll call them, um, I think they forget that. I think they forget the humanity side of things because when you get enter into that political box, and I think anyone that says a green suited general officer, regardless of the service, is not political. Um, I don't think that's accurate.
Right.
But once you enter that political box, it's almost as if you're kind of controlled by the parameters within that box rather than using common sense or using humanity. because as we both know, the government is inherently extremely bureaucratic.
Yeah.
We don't apply a lot of common sense because we can't. We have to fill out a form to request common sense. Um, and the higher you get, the more you have to, work within those bureaucratic parameters. So it's,
Yeah.
you need somebody that's, I would say, not a type A, but well, you need a servant leader. You need a servant leader that understands people and can work with people and the diversity of people, because people are not the same, and you gotta be able to do that, and it's difficult at those high levels.
It sure is. And I'm being really hard on those guys, but you know what? They can also take it. They can
They
take
get
it.
paid a lot anyway, so
You paid a lot of money and they continue to get paid a lot of money and the results aren't there. Look, you can say I'm a logistician and I logistitiated and everything got to where it's supposed to get to. It's not my fault we lost. You know, you be an infantry commander. I held the battle space, you know, but at some point we have to change what we're doing. Otherwise, we can't do what we're doing. And that's what we keep doing.
yeah.
So I guess let me on that very fun sentence, let me wrap this thing up. Anything in
Sure.
closing at all? Mike? This has been fantastic, man. I love that we've done it and I want to do more.
Yeah, no, I didn't prep for anything. I wanted this to be pretty raw.
Yeah.
I wanted to be provoked a little bit with some of your questions, and um, so that's why I didn't prepare for this. So what you got is that's it. It's just
Yeah.
raw. So
I would
I
challenge you in that, by the way. You know how to do this, so you are prepped through your professional work, like we're ready. But it's yeah, I get what you're saying. You want it to be a real conversation.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to articulate. Is I just wanted it to be real, so there was no, like, I don't have any notes or anything, or there's no teleprompter there.
I have
I'm not
one.
gonna make I'm not gonna make a Biden joke, but um, no, I just appreciate your time, Pete.
Yeah.
And as I've told you a couple times prior to this, it was great to reconnect with you and stir up some old memories, good and bad. I still got some scars that I'm dealing with all that we've experienced together. But I appreciate your time and what you're trying to do and share the story. And probably more importantly than this story is I think um, the tragedies that you've had with suicide, and you're trying to fight back, and that's not easy. It's noble for sure, um, and I appreciate you and what you're trying to do in that regard.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. All right,
And I'll
let me
send
wrap
my
this.
bill for saying that.
Okay, good.
No, just kidding.
And
Pete didn't
that
pay me a penny.
everybody go to my website or my Facebook page and you can see the link for the Save the Brave fundraiser and go throw some money in the pot so we can make this thing happen. All right, I'm gonna shut this thing off. Stand by, Mike.
Sure.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly.